we could contribute $1 billion to the board of peace from the frozen assets assets frozen by the previous administration, and the remaining funds from the funds frozen in the United States could be used to rebuild territories that suffered during hostilities once we sign a peace deal.
What's with the board of peace? It took a back seat to Greenland at Davos. Maybe it deserves more attention. The board of peace is President Trump's vehicle for overturning the world order. That is the world order that America itself established after World War II. It is a sweeping initiative. It started as a way to rebuild Gaza, but Trump wanted to do much more. It looks like he wanted to replace the United Nations. He's no love for the UN, and he's not too happy with NATO either. So in true Trumpian style, he organizes his own world order. And he's running the show, totally. He's in full control of the Board of Peace. He decides who is on it. He approves the agenda. He can veto any decision. He can dissolve the board. He is the inaugural chairman, and he can appoint his own successor. No question, it is Trump's Board of Peace.
President Trump is expected to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, while his envoys are preparing to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. This marks the latest round of negotiations aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. It has been a busy and consequential morning. Just hours ago, President Trump officially launched what his administration is calling the Board of Peace. 19 nations attended the signing ceremony, but only one European ally was present, Hungary, led by Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The absence of other major European allies was notable and raised questions about the board's reach and legitimacy. The Board of Peace was created to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza, though the president has made it clear that its mandate could extend far beyond that. He suggested the board could work alongside the United Nations, while also criticizing the UN for failing to fully use its potential in resolving global conflicts. He said the United Nations has tremendous potential, but has not always applied it effectively, and that the combination of the board and the right people could be something very unique for the world. At the same time, new questions are emerging about what the president has described as a framework for a future deal involving Greenland. While he has stepped back from recent tariff threats against European allies and ruled out the use of military force, the details of any agreement remain unclear. The White House has said more information will be released once the framework is fully finalized, but for now, it appears to be a prospective deal. In Davos, the administration says roughly 30 of about 50 invited countries have agreed to participate in the Board of Peace so far. Invitations were only sent out late last week, which partially explains the limited turnout. Despite the president's claim that few countries have declined, several key allies, including the United Kingdom, France, Norway, and Italy, have yet to commit. The president has also stated that Russian President Vladimir Putin has agreed to participate, though that claim has not been confirmed by the Kremlin. There has been discussion about using frozen Russian assets held in the United States to fund participation after an initial 3-year term, but those details remain unresolved. Much of today's focus has been on Gaza. Senior U.S. officials outlined an ambitious reconstruction plan, including a projected cost of around $25 billion. However, it is still unclear who would pay for that effort or how funding would be divided among participating nations. The humanitarian situation in Gaza remains dire. Millions of residents are living in makeshift tents and temporary shelters with limited access to clean water, electricity, and functioning sewage systems. Heavy rains have flooded many areas, creating further hardship. Aid organizations, including the United Nations and World Central Kitchen, have been providing food and emergency supplies, but long-term rebuilding is expected to take years. President Zelensky, who was not initially expected to attend the forum, has now arrived in Davos and is expected to meet with President Trump shortly. Any outcome from that meeting could have major implications for the future of the war in Ukraine. At the same time, Trump's envoys are preparing to meet with President Putin in Moscow, signaling continued U.S. engagement in seeking a negotiated resolution. The presence of only one European ally at the signing ceremony reflects growing skepticism among traditional partners. Many leaders are concerned that the board could compete with existing institutions, particularly the United Nations, creating tensions over authority and funding. However, the administration insists the board will complement existing international organizations, allowing for faster and more flexible interventions in conflict zones. The launch of the Board of Peace is also seen as a pivot in U.S. foreign policy toward a more assertive approach to international conflict management. By selectively bypassing traditional multilateral processes or working alongside them, the administration is signaling a willingness to reshape diplomatic norms and assert U.S. leadership on global reconstruction and stabilization initiatives. This intensive period in Davos also comes on the heels of the Greenland Framework announcement. While details remain limited, the framework signals the administration's continued interest in securing strategic interests in the Arctic region. President Trump's statements suggest a focus on long-term agreements without military escalation, though many questions remain about the nature of U.S. control and the responsibilities of European and international partners. As the forum continues, the combination of the Board of Peace, discussions over Ukraine, the Greenland Framework, and U.S. Europe relations highlights a period of intense diplomatic activity. The decisions made here and the agreements reached could have far-reaching consequences for global stability, humanitarian reconstruction, and the United States' role in shaping international governance over the coming years. President Trump's announcement of the Board of Peace has drawn global attention, in part because of its ambitious mission to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza, a territory long devastated by conflict, blockades, and political instability. Gaza, home to more than 2 million people, has endured decades of violence, intermittent ceasefires, and cycles of destruction and partial rebuilding. The humanitarian situation is dire, with vast portions of the population living in temporary shelters or makeshift tents, lacking access to clean water, reliable electricity, and functional sewage systems. Children and vulnerable populations are particularly affected, and international aid agencies have repeatedly warned that without sustained intervention, the territory faces a persistent humanitarian crisis. The Board of Peace, as envisioned by the Trump administration, seeks to mobilize international resources to address these challenges. At its core, the plan is designed to provide a comprehensive strategy that combines financial investment, governance reforms, and stabilization measures. The administration has projected the total cost of Gaza's reconstruction at approximately $25 billion, though funding sources remain a subject of negotiation among participating nations. The United States, through both direct funding and the coordination of allied contributions, is expected to play a central role, while other countries are encouraged to participate based on their capacity and regional interests. One of the most significant aspects of this plan is its proposed integration with the United Nations. Despite President Trump's frequent criticisms of the UN's past inefficiencies, he has emphasized that the Board of Peace is intended to complement existing international institutions. The administration argues that by working alongside the UN, but with a more agile and focused structure, reconstruction efforts can be accelerated, bureaucratic delays minimized, and oversight strengthened. This represents a departure from traditional multilateral approaches, which have often been criticized for slow decision-making, political gridlock, and limited enforcement capabilities. The reconstruction plan itself is multi-layered. It includes the rebuilding of residential housing, which has been destroyed or severely damaged during repeated conflicts. This involves not only the construction of physical structures, but also the development of sustainable infrastructure, including water treatment facilities, electricity grids, and transportation networks. Healthcare facilities are also a priority, given the high prevalence of chronic disease and the psychological trauma affecting much of the population. Hospitals and clinics must be rebuilt or upgraded to ensure that medical care is accessible and effective. Educational facilities, from primary schools to vocational training centers, are included as well, reflecting the administration's stated goal of fostering long-term stability through human capital development. Economic revitalization is another key component. Gaza's economy has been crippled by blockades, high unemployment, and restrictions on trade and mobility. The Board of Peace aims to stimulate economic growth by attracting investment, supporting small and medium-sized enterprises, and facilitating the flow of goods and services. Job creation is central to this strategy, both as a means of alleviating poverty and as a stabilizing factor, reducing the appeal of extremist groups that have historically gained support by exploiting economic hardship. Agriculture, manufacturing, and technology sectors are all expected to benefit from targeted investments, with an emphasis on sustainable practices and regional integration. Security and governance are equally critical. Any reconstruction effort in Gaza cannot succeed without addressing the underlying political and security challenges. The Board of Peace plans to coordinate with local authorities, international peacekeeping forces, and law enforcement agencies to establish a secure environment for reconstruction activities. Governance reforms, including transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption measures, are intended to ensure that aid and investment reach those most in need. These reforms are also designed to provide a framework for effective administration once reconstruction is complete, reducing the risk of future crises and fostering long-term stability. Regional cooperation is a cornerstone of the plan. The board includes countries with vested interests in Gaza's stability, including Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Morocco. Each of these countries brings different perspectives, expertise, and resources, creating a collaborative environment aimed at comprehensive solutions. However, the inclusion of some countries has raised concerns among certain international observers, particularly Israel, which has expressed skepticism regarding Turkey and Qatar's participation due to historical support for groups opposed to Israeli interests. These tensions highlight the delicate balance required to navigate regional politics while maintaining the board's mission-focused agenda. Humanitarian considerations are central to the Board of Peace's approach. Millions of residents in Gaza face daily challenges related to food security, clean water access, and medical care. International organizations, including the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, and non-governmental organizations such as the World Food Program, have played a crucial role in providing emergency aid. Despite these efforts, chronic shortages and infrastructure deficiencies have persisted. The Board of Peace seeks to coordinate and expand these efforts, leveraging both public and private sector resources to create a sustainable system that addresses immediate humanitarian needs while laying the groundwork for long-term recovery. The political dimension cannot be overlooked. Gaza is governed by Hamas, a group considered a terrorist organization by the United States and several other countries. Any reconstruction effort must navigate the complexities of local governance, security challenges, and international law. The Board of Peace has indicated that funds will be managed with strict oversight to prevent diversion or misuse, with mechanisms in place to ensure that resources are allocated to civilian needs rather than military or paramilitary activities. The administration has also emphasized the importance of engaging local communities, building trust, and fostering inclusive participation to ensure that reconstruction benefits all residents. Education and social services are included as critical elements. Schools, vocational training centers, and community programs are envisioned to provide opportunities for young people, women, and marginalized populations. By investing in education, the board aims to create pathways out of poverty, reduce susceptibility to extremist ideologies, and foster social cohesion. Healthcare initiatives include mental health services to address trauma resulting from years of conflict, as well as expanded access to preventive care, vaccinations, and treatment for chronic illnesses. The Board of Peace also recognizes the environmental challenges in Gaza. Decades of conflict and inadequate infrastructure have led to widespread environmental degradation, including water pollution, soil contamination, and limited waste management. Reconstruction efforts will incorporate sustainable practices such as renewable energy solutions, improved water treatment facilities, and environmentally sound urban planning. These initiatives aim to create a safer, healthier, and more resilient living environment for the population. Financing the plan remains a complex issue. The administration has proposed a combination of U.S. funding, contributions from participating nations, and the potential use of frozen Russian assets as part of long-term investment strategies. While the U.S. is expected to lead in both financial and logistical support, The success of the board depends on international cooperation, transparency, and accountability. Establishing clear mechanisms for monitoring and reporting is critical to maintaining credibility and ensuring that reconstruction efforts achieve their intended outcomes. The global reaction to the announcement has been mixed. Some nations view the Board of Peace as a promising model for targeted, rapid response to humanitarian crises, particularly in regions where traditional multilateral approaches have faltered. Others, particularly in Europe, remain skeptical, questioning the board's legitimacy, its relationship to existing international institutions, and its ability to operate effectively without creating new bureaucratic challenges. These concerns underscore the delicate diplomatic balancing act required to implement such a sweeping initiative. President Trump's announcement of the Board of Peace has drawn intense global attention, largely because of its ambitious mission to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza, a territory that has endured decades of conflict, humanitarian crises, and economic stagnation. Gaza is home to over 2 million people, many of whom live under harsh conditions, facing limited access to clean water, electricity, and functioning sewage systems. Over the years, repeated rounds of violence, military operations, and blockades have destroyed homes, infrastructure, and essential public services, leaving the population highly vulnerable. The administration has presented the Board of Peace as a mechanism to address these urgent challenges, combining humanitarian aid, reconstruction funding, and governance reforms in a coordinated, multilateral framework. The projected cost for Gaza's reconstruction has been estimated at $25 billion, a figure that encompasses housing, healthcare, education, infrastructure, and economic revitalization. While the precise distribution of financial responsibility among participating nations remains uncertain, the plan signals a clear intention for the United States to play a central leadership role, both in terms of funding and in managing international coordination. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is both immediate and long-term. Millions of residents live in temporary shelters, with makeshift housing often vulnerable to flooding during seasonal rains. Food insecurity continues to affect a significant portion of the population, with many families. Education has also been deeply disrupted by years of conflict. Many schools have been damaged or destroyed, and children face limited access to consistent learning opportunities. The Board of Peace has proposed initiatives to rebuild schools, establish vocational training centers, and provide opportunities for youth development. These efforts aim not only to restore educational infrastructure, but also to create a pathway towards social stability and long-term economic recovery. By investing in education and social programs, the board hopes to reduce the appeal of extremist ideologies and provide a sense of hope and opportunity for future generations. Security and governance remain among the most complex challenges. Gaza is governed by Hamas, a group considered a terrorist organization by the United States, Israel, and several other countries. Any reconstruction effort must navigate these political realities while ensuring that resources are allocated effectively to civilian needs. The Board of Peace intends to establish strict oversight mechanisms to prevent diversion of funds or materials for military purposes. Additionally, coordination with local authorities and international peacekeeping entities is expected to create a secure environment for reconstruction and ensure that aid reaches the populations that need it most. The involvement of multiple nations in the Board of Peace adds both capacity and complexity. Countries including Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Morocco are participating, each bringing different resources, experience, and regional perspectives. This broad coalition is intended to ensure that reconstruction is not solely reliant on the United States, while also fostering regional cooperation. However, the inclusion of certain countries, particularly Turkey and Qatar, has raised concerns with Israel, which argues that these nations have historically supported groups opposed to Israeli interests. Navigating these political sensitivities will be essential to maintaining the board's credibility and effectiveness. Funding mechanisms for the reconstruction plan are still being negotiated. The United States has indicated that it will provide substantial contributions, supplemented by investments from participating countries. There is also discussion of using frozen Russian assets held in the United States as part of the long-term funding strategy. Transparency and accountability will be critical given the scale of the project and the risk of corruption or misallocation. The administration has emphasized that strict oversight will be enforced to ensure that funds are directed toward reconstruction, social services, and economic development, rather than military or political objectives. The Board of Peace also addresses environmental concerns. Gaza has long suffered from pollution, water scarcity, and inadequate waste management. Reconstruction efforts include measures to improve environmental conditions, such as modernizing water treatment facilities, implementing waste management systems, and investing in renewable energy sources. These initiatives aim to create a healthier and more sustainable environment for residents, while also contributing to long-term resilience against future conflicts or natural disasters. In addition to physical reconstruction, social programs are a critical element of the plan. Education, healthcare, and vocational training are all prioritized to help rebuild the human capital of Gaza. Mental health services are particularly important, as many residents, especially children, have experienced trauma due to years of conflict. Programs to support women, youth, and marginalized populations aim to foster inclusion and reduce social inequalities, which are often drivers of instability. The political dimension of the plan is equally important. Gaza's governance structures must be engaged carefully to ensure cooperation without empowering groups that could use reconstruction resources for political or military advantage. The Board of Peace proposes working closely with local leaders, international monitors, and community organizations to maintain transparency and build trust among residents. Governance reforms, including anti-corruption measures and accountability structures, are designed to provide a stable foundation for long-term recovery. The international reaction to the Board of Peace has been mixed. Supporters view it as an innovative model for rapid, targeted intervention in areas where traditional multilateral approaches have failed. Critics, particularly in Europe, question the legitimacy of a US-led initiative, expressing concern that it could bypass existing institutions such as the United Nations or undermine established frameworks for international aid and reconstruction. Skepticism is also fueled by the selective inclusion of certain countries and the perceived marginalization of long-standing European allies. Despite these concerns, the administration argues that the board represents a pragmatic solution to a pressing humanitarian crisis. By streamlining decision-making, leveraging resources from multiple countries, and focusing on tangible outcomes, the Board of Peace is intended to accelerate reconstruction and provide a model for similar initiatives in other conflict-affected regions. The goal is to combine efficiency, oversight, and international cooperation in a way that has not been achieved in previous multilateral efforts. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza has persisted for decades, with repeated conflicts leading to cycles of destruction and partial rebuilding. Prior international efforts have often been slow, constrained by bureaucracy, political disagreements, and funding shortfalls. The Board of Peace aims to address these limitations by creating a focused, well-resourced, and accountable structure capable of implementing reconstruction projects on a scale and timeline that has not been seen before. Daily life in Gaza remains extremely difficult. Residents face constant uncertainty, with many living in shelters vulnerable to flooding and extreme weather. Access to electricity is limited, and the healthcare system is stretched to its limits. Food insecurity remains a persistent concern, with many families reliant on humanitarian aid to meet basic nutritional needs. The board's initiatives are designed to address these immediate needs while simultaneously laying the groundwork for long-term recovery and sustainable development. Economic opportunities in Gaza are scarce, contributing to high unemployment rates, especially among young adults. The Board of Peace plan seeks to address this by supporting business development, creating jobs, and facilitating trade within the region. By investing in infrastructure, agriculture, manufacturing, and technology, the board hopes to provide a path towards self-sufficiency and economic stability. Employment opportunities are also seen as a key factor in reducing the influence of extremist groups, which often exploit poverty and instability for recruitment. The Board of Peace also emphasizes the importance of collaboration with international organizations and NGOs. While the United States is taking a leading role, the success of the initiative depends on coordination with existing humanitarian agencies, including the UN, the Red Cross, and various non-governmental organizations. By combining resources and expertise, the board aims to maximize impact and ensure that reconstruction efforts are comprehensive, sustainable, and responsive to local needs. The environmental impact of reconstruction is another critical consideration. Gaza has faced significant challenges related to water scarcity, pollution, and inadequate waste management. The Board of Peace intends to incorporate sustainable practices into rebuilding efforts, including renewable energy solutions, improved water treatment facilities, and environmentally responsible urban planning. These measures are intended to create a more resilient and livable environment for residents, while also reducing the risk of future crises caused by environmental degradation. The political and security landscape adds another layer of complexity. Gaza is governed by Hamas, and any reconstruction effort must navigate the delicate balance of providing humanitarian aid while preventing the misuse of resources for political or military purposes. The board plans to implement rigorous oversight mechanisms, including international monitoring, auditing, and accountability systems, to ensure that funds and materials are used appropriately. This approach is intended to build trust among participating nations, local authorities, and residents, while minimizing the risk of corruption or diversion. As the World Economic Forum in Davos continues to unfold, the launch of the Board of Peace, discussions on Gaza reconstruction, ongoing negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, and the framework regarding Greenland all highlight a pivotal moment in global diplomacy. These developments underscore the complexity of international relations, the challenges of humanitarian reconstruction, and the delicate balance between national interests and global cooperation. The coming months and years will reveal how effective the Board of Peace can be, whether it can deliver tangible results in Gaza, and how it may influence broader efforts toward global stability. While the path forward remains uncertain, one thing is clear: the world is watching closely. And the decisions made today could have lasting consequences for millions of people and for the future of international collaboration. If you want to stay updated on this story, the latest developments from Davos, and in-depth analysis of global events, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update, and join the conversation as we continue to follow these critical developments shaping the world today.